So here's the thing with homemade meals. Eating them is great, but all the chopping and measuring and cleanup, not so much. With new one pan assemble and bake meals from Blue Apron, you get all the flavor of homemade meals with a fraction of the work. Just assemble the pre chopped ingredients, bake in the oven, and enjoy. Shop Assemble and Bake at blueapron.com. Get 50% off your first two orders with code APRON50. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Hey there, welcome into this week's episode of the Show Before the Show podcast, the official podcast of minor league baseball. It is a fun time on the sports calendar right now. We got the Olympics going on, football season's just in the background, basketball and hockey are rolling in to Olympic breaks and All-Star Week and all that kind of stuff. But baseball is nearly upon us. Pitchers and catchers report this week to spring training across Florida and Arizona. And with that, we say hello and welcome you in. My name is Tyler Mon, joined by Benjamin Hill and Sam Dykstra in New York City. Fellas, what's going on?
Yeah, not much. Well, I would say not much, but you just reeled off how much is happening in the sporting world, Tyler. Yeah. I will throw out there, and I will say this is not something I've really thought about a ton, but I do feel it in this moment. I feel like two of the most optimistic words in baseball or in just sports are opening day, because everybody's 0-0, everybody's technically got a chance. I will say, actually, the most optimistic words are three words, and it's pitchers and catchers.
Yeah.
Because it happens in the middle of February where everybody's like wondering, when is spring actually going to arrive? And when spring training camps open in Arizona and Florida, those of us who live in northern climes are like, oh, optimism is actually right around the corner.
It's coming.
It's feeling a little bit warmer. You can feel it in your bones. Those of us who are not in Arizona or Florida yet can at least feel that something is coming. And I'm jealous of all of our friends and colleagues who are in those areas already getting on the ground. And I'll be there next month in both states. But it just feels like a good time. And we're going to talk about this later in the on-field segment about some of the injuries that have already happened. And that takes away a little bit of that sunshine. But there is sunshine happening in baseball right now, and I'll gladly take it.
That is pretty great. And we're stoked to get into the actual real day-to-day activities of baseball as it's all coming up soon. But we still got a few weeks of off-season conversations to have. And wherever you found us, thanks for hanging out with us on this week's episode of the Show Before the Show. You can get in touch, podcast@milb.com, and let us know your questions, your thoughts, and everything as we head toward the 2026 season. And as always, we kick off this week's episode of the show with our weekly edition of Ben's Biz Banter, presented by Circle K, the official convenience store of minor league baseball. And Benjamin Hill, rolling toward the start of the 2026 campaign. We've got a really fun conversation coming up here in a little while, me and Ben. But first off, Ben, how are you? What's up?
Doing all right. It's been a stressful week. A lot going on, personally and professionally. Trying to keep my head above water. I'm doing okay. I hope when I get home, I can start my car. The battery died. And I'm feeling a little anxious about it. Shout out to Josh, a friend of mine, a father of a kid in my son's pre-K class. We jump started today. He got me going again, but I'm a little worried the battery's not gonna start again when I try again tonight. So looking forward to getting home. No optimism for me. I'm just trying to start my car. Pitchers and catchers report, fine. I'm in New York City.
All right. Well, Ben, we've got all kinds of different stuff to talk about this week, but we are going to kick off our conversation with a rebrand that I was not expecting, but is an interesting one. The Lynchburg Hillcats are no more. A longtime name in minor league baseball in the Carolina League in Lynchburg, Virginia. A new identity for the Lynchburg Hillcats. It's an interesting one. Give us the lowdown on Lynchburg's rebrand.
Yeah, this will be the finest, perhaps the finest, totally new team name announced for the upcoming 2026 campaign. The Lynchburg Hillcats, they've had that Hillcats name for 30 years now, and baseball in Lynchburg, Virginia goes back to the 19th century. But after three decades as the Hillcats, they're changing things up, and starting next season, they will be the Hill City Howlers. Ow! That's my approximation of a howl. I don't know. I'm feeling a little self-conscious
pretty
here
good.
in
That's
this
pretty
little
good.
phone
That's pretty
room.
good. No,
We're in
I'm
the
not expecting
office.
that either. That was
Yeah, we're here in the office. I feel I can't let it unleash my inner beast. But the ballpark, it's now called Bank of the James Stadium in Lynchburg. It's one of the oldest in minor league baseball. It goes back to 1940, and there is a large cemetery, the Spring Hill Cemetery, near the ballpark, uh, adjacent to it. Caddy corner, perhaps, but very close. So the team has created this story about a group of monsters who made their way from the tunnels in the cemetery to the ballpark and teamed up to help the franchise in their next era. And so the team is now the Hill City Howlers, based on this suite of monsters led by a literal howler, Indy the werewolf. And the logo suite also includes monsters that are kind of in the larger style of the original Universal movie monsters we think of. There's a Bride of Frankenstein, there's a mummy, there's a swamp thing, and there is a vampire, Dracula. And so it's these cemetery monsters, good-hearted, benevolent monsters, led by Indy the werewolf, who have made their way to Lynchburg's ballpark to kick off this new era as the Howlers. So it'll be interesting to see how this develops and how the team, incorporates all these elements going forward. And also, it's Hill City. It's the Hill City Howler. So they're not using Lynchburg as the place name. And of course, we have a recent precedent for that because last year we had a brand new team in minor league baseball, the Hub City Spartanburgers, where they used as the geographical name in the team name, they used Hub City, a nickname for Spartanburg. That one was a little different because Spartanburg was in the team name itself, Hub City Spartanburgers, but no Lynchburg in the team name, just Hill City Howlers. And Hill City is Lynchburg's nickname because it's nestled there in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. There's hills, beyond the ballpark. It's a very hilly area in general. I think it was initially called, the City of Seven Hills when it was first established. And now it's Hill City Howlers. So looking forward to seeing what comes of this. I know it was a long and winding road on this Lynchburg rebrand, and glad they're getting it out into the world. And it was done by Brandiose. We should have those guys on the podcast sometime. Have we ever had them on the podcast for all the mentions?
Man, that is a great question. I don't know if we
Jason and
have
Casey
actually.
from Brandiose. I mean, I've known those guys for 20 years. Haven't talked to them too recently, but they've obviously been behind a lot of stuff in minor league baseball, and they were the designers on this one as well.
All right, Ben. A new identity for Lynchburg, now Hill City, but we also have a lot of alt identities that continue to roll in. Who is latest in the alternate identity landscape?
Well, I just mentioned the Hub City Spartanburgers. They have a new alternate identity, the Spartanburg Pastimes. And that is a tribute to old time baseball in general. The logo is uh, a vintage baseball player in vintage font. I wish I could describe it a little better than vintage. And pastimes, obviously, a vintage word. It's our national pastime. And that's a last year for the Spartanburgers, it was all about how they were a new team, Hub City Spartanburgers, and their fun, new, goofy, very modern minor league baseball energy. And this year, obviously, they're continuing with that as their day-to-day style. But there's been a lot of baseball in Spartanburg through the years. And the previous home for minor league baseball in Spartanburg was at a ballpark called Duncan Park. And that opened in 1926 and hosted minor league baseball all the way through the 1990s and is still in use for high school today. And I got a chance to visit Duncan Park when I visited the Spartanburgers last year, and it's beautiful. Just in a residential neighborhood, this really great backdrop of trees. A lot of the seats were originally from Shibe Park in Philadelphia when that ballpark was demolished. A lot of the seats, not the sheets, the seats went to Duncan Park in Spartanburg, and they're still there. And so I'm interested to see what the Spartanburgers do, not just when they play as the Pastimes, but the ways in which they plan on celebrating the 100th anniversary of Duncan Park in the year 2026, and hopefully incorporate that ballpark into some of their larger plans. I remember talking to their GM last year, Tyson Jeffers, and he was really into that history and really into ways that the team could raise the profile of that old ballpark and maybe help get some money into it so it can continue hosting baseball for a long time. And hey, pie in the sky, let's dream. make it available to host professional baseball. That'd be the real dream. Another Rickwood Field on our hands, but one thing at a time.
I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? Like you highlighted a little bit in there is that we have this brand new team, and you think everything should be bright and shiny and new, and celebrating what's new about it, both on the minor league landscape and in town. But the fact that they have this rich history to tap into is worth going to in year two. Like this is such a perfectly laid out plan, and I'm really excited to see what they do with it. Like you said, like it would be great if we had multiple Rickwoods, not just the one Rickwood, because there are so many different places in this country that still have old ballparks that have stories worth telling and getting on a bigger stage. So, maybe this is just year two in Hub City. Can't wait to see what it means beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's revitalize every old ballpark in the whole country. That's what I want to do.
I wholeheartedly agree with that initiative. Actually, I think pretty much every ballpark that is in existence and hosted some cool historic baseball, we should find ways to play there. All right, Ben, who else? We got a couple more teams on the alt identities rollout.
How about the Southern Tier Scoop Scoundrels? How about
The
them?
what?
Southern
the who?
Tier Scoop Scoundrels. STSS. Southern Tier Scoop Scoundrels. I was doing well on saying it, and then I messed up. Southern
STSS
Tier
is very close to
Scoop
SBTS, as in the show before the show, so that's pretty cool. Southern Tier Scoop Scoundrels. I can't identify a single thing about this team just from that name, so please explain.
Well, the Southern Tier, TIER, is the region of upstate New York, of which Binghamton, New York, is a part. I can't define the Southern Tier all that well, but Binghamton is one of the major cities within the Southern Tier region of New York. So the Southern Tier Scoop Scoundrels is a Binghamton Rumble Ponies alternate identity, with Scoop Scoundrels being a reference to an obscure law that apparently existed at one time in our nation's or New York State history, that it was illegal to stash a scoop of ice cream in your back pocket, which I guess was for the purpose of like stealing a horse. Like you take the ice cream out of a back pocket and steal a horse. These are pretty tough to research, and I feel I get a chance to use one of my favorite words, apocryphal. I feel like a lot of these zany laws of olden times, like it's really hard to find concrete examples. But does it matter? No, nothing matters. And if you recall, the Binghamton Rumble Ponies last year had their bathtub donkeys alternate identity, and that was based on a law that apparently it was illegal to keep your donkey in a bathtub on a Sunday. So they did well with that, and so now they're coming back with another obscure jurisprudence-related alternate identity, Southern Tier Scoop Scoundrels, and the logo is a scoundrel ice cream cone. It's an anthropomorphic ice cream cone wearing one of those old school like robber masks like you'd see in as a kid in cartoons, like robbers wore masks. So this is a literal Scoop Scoundrel. He's up to no good, this Scoop. But the Binghamton Rumble Ponies are doing that one. And look for that this season as well, following in the grand tradition of the bathtub donkeys. And we've got one more for you. Bowling Green White Squirrels. That is, of course, an alternate identity of the Bowling Green Hot Rods. This is a tribute to white squirrels, these anomalous rodents that apparently are very common in the Bowling Green area. They have a genetic condition called leucism, Leucism. Well, these white squirrels have leucism, and I guess we don't need a cure. It makes them unique, and they live long and healthy lives. And there's white squirrels all over Bowling Green, and that's a really good look, that identity, designed really well. Bowling Green Hot Rods have been leaders on the alternate identity front for a long time. We just recently talked about their 10th anniversary Bowling Green Bootleggers alternate identity, and now they've added the white squirrels, paying tribute to, again, biological anomalies, strange rodents, the white squirrels of Bowling Green.
Just before we move on here, I just want to give an 80 grade to Ben's use of jurisprudence in the Scoop Scoundrels breakdown there. That was tremendous, Ben. So I did not want that to go by without getting acknowledged.
Yeah, I try my best. I hope listeners to this podcast, jurisprudence, apocryphal, all these other words I try to sneak in. many of which I don't know how to pronounce, such as, leucism.
Try to use them in a sentence today, listeners. Take jurisprudence and throw it into your own daily rotation.
Yeah. Better yet, obscure jurisprudence. I like the way those two words sound together.
All right, Ben. Well, we are coming to the close of much longer segment number 1 than any of you listening will ever actually know. But we had a really great conversation earlier today with a longtime member of the minor league baseball world. Tee up our interview segment for us this week, Ben.
Yeah, Bob Burris. His father, Jim, was a quintessential baseball man, brought Bob into the game. Jim Burris was, among many other things, a general manager of the Denver Bears. They're in Tyler's hometown. And Bob Burris learned about the world of sports through working for the Denver Bears, playing in a 75,000 seat capacity Mile High Stadium for a minor league baseball team. So this is a great discussion. A lot of historical tidbits and a lot of insight to minor league baseball as it once was. And so here's Bob Burris.
If the birth control pill isn't feeling like the right fit anymore, you've got options. Natural Cycles is the only FDA-cleared birth control app that's 100% hormone-free. It works by tracking your daily temperature to pinpoint your fertile days, so you'll know which days you can and can't get pregnant. No hormones, no side effects, just science that works with your body. Millions have already made the switch, and you can too. Save 15% when you sign up today with code RADIO15 at naturalcycles.com.
Well, continuing along in this week's episode of the Show Before the Show podcast, the official podcast of minor league baseball, we are thrilled to be joined by a guy who is a sports lifer, a longtime professional sports executive, got his start in the world of minor league baseball and has stories for not just days, stories for years. And that is Bob Burris, longtime baseball and other sports executive, and a guy after my own heart because he got to kick off his career sweeping the floors at Old Mile High Stadium when it was home to the Denver Bears of then I guess it would have been the American Association.
It was the American Association.
Bob, welcome.
Yes.
It's so good to have you.
Well, thanks, Tyler, and it's a pleasure to be here. And anytime I can talk about some days in minor league baseball is a good day for me.
Well, this is so cool for us because, we talked, Ben made a great point before we started recording. We kind of get caught up talking so much about, all right, here's what's coming up. Here's what's happening this season. Here are these promos. Here's this rebrand. But it's been a little while since we've talked about the minor league baseball of old. And, I think you could cut minor league baseball into several different eras. And yours is probably even before the most recent era prior to the MLB takeover of the minor leagues. But back when minor league baseball was really almost its own ecosystem of, markets that had teams that they were very proud of, athletes that they really identified with, and it was a different chapter in minor league baseball history. Take us through your upbringing in the game. Your father, Jim, obviously was the reason behind that, but tell us about where the Bob Burris story began in minor league baseball.
Well, that's a great question, and yes, I was heavily influenced by my father. My dad, who rode on trains with Babe Ruth, and he was working for the American Legion at the time, and he was the director of publicity. But later, and he went to work for the Sporting News later, and that's where he got acquainted with the Dizzy Deans and the Carl Hubbles, and of course I've talked about Ruth. But my dad was, a sports writer at the Sporting News. When he realized that he wasn't good enough to be a writer there, wanted to do something in sports, whatever it could be. And Mr. Spink, who owned the Sporting News, gave him an opportunity, actually put an ad in the Sporting News of advising of my dad's availability. And that's when the American Legion hired him. But so I grew up already. When I grew up, my dad had already taught me I already knew the statistics of 367 was Ty Cobb's lifetime batting average. Ruth had 714 home runs. Cy Young and Mel Ott both had 511 victories and home runs, same number. So I think at seventh grade, I recited Casey at the bat. So don't ask me about anything political because I don't know anything about that, but I know a little bit about baseball. So I said to my father on June 5, 1961, he took me to Yankee Stadium, and my hero was Mickey Mantle. And my dad had woke me up very early that morning in Denver and our house in Lakewood, and said, "Bob, I'm going to take you to Yankee Stadium today, and you're going to see your hero Mickey Mantle." So I can remember it, Tyler, like it was yesterday. I remember flying to Manhattan. As we got close to Manhattan, I saw the skyscrapers to the left, the Statue of Liberty to my right. We landed, crazy cab ride to Jack Dempsey's restaurant.
Wow.
And Dempsey had been, as you may know, from Manassas, Colorado.
The Manassas Mauler.
That's right. And somehow my dad got word to Dempsey, and Dempsey spent the next 40 minutes eating lunch with us, and the bill never came. So I go to Yankee Stadium. We rush then to the commissioner's office, which was Ford Frick at the time. And my dad was working for Ford Frick at this time as a special assistant. So now I've been to New York, seen Dempsey, gone to the commissioner's office, and now we hurry, take a subway ride to New York City, to the Yankee Stadium, the house that Ruth built. We eat in the press box of Yankee Stadium, and then we sit in Ralph Houck, manager of the ball club's box. And in the third inning, Houck came out and said hi to us, and my dad at that time told him of my affection for Mickey Mantle. And the next thing I know, Mantle comes out of the dugout, right? I'm as close to him as maybe 5 feet, and winks at me.
Wow.
And I was hooked. But the best part of the story is that Mantle strikes out 3 times, looks horrible. And I'm crying. I'm crying. And my dad said, "What are you crying for?" And I said, "Dad, I feel so sorry for Mickey. How do you think he feels?" Well, I would later find out later in life that Mickey was probably nursing a hangover.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that. Anyway, I'm just praying that he will get one more chance at bat. And he does in the bottom of the 8th inning on a 2-ball, 1-strike count. Mantle crushes a home run right center field, and the Yankees win.
Amazing.
And it was at that moment that I just knew that I wanted to be in this business. It was the cigar smoke or the popcorn or the smell of hot dogs. It just all made sense. So from that point on, I told my dad I wanted to be like him and be in the business. And first thing he did, though, when about another couple of years went by, I started sweeping the stadium at Mile High Stadium, my first job. I thought my dad was the general manager of the team. I thought, I might be selling tickets or something, but it was, he said,
start
"No,
at the ground floor.
You're going to start at the very bottom." Well, he meant it, but best thing I ever did. Anyway, from there it was to selling popcorn and working on the grounds crew and rolling out the tarp. And then from there it was selling popcorn, selling tickets, and everything in between. So I just got hooked on the business of baseball. And I hope that answered your question.
It did.
Long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
By the way, Bob's dad, Jim, was the CEO of the Denver Bears, and they went through all kinds of different affiliations, and different leagues. And Denver was kind of used as a bargaining chip for potential major league expansion or a team moving at that time. So it was a very unique minor league team and market, which we'll talk about. But Ben, I'll cede the floor to you.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious about the Denver Bears as a franchise. One, just because it's from a different era of minor league baseball, but two, in today's minor league baseball, a stadium with a large capacity has maybe 10 or 12,000 people, and you were operating a minor league team in a big market, but still a minor league team in a stadium that had what, like
75,000? No, 75,000.
75,000.
Same as because the Broncos played there, man.
Yeah. So 75,000, an NFL stadium. That's kind of inconceivable in today's minor league baseball landscape to think of a team playing day in and day out in that facility. So what were the positives and the drawbacks of operating out of a facility that was just almost unfathomably massive by minor league baseball standards? And what was a good crowd for minor league baseball in Denver when you had that big of a stadium?
Well, I've always said in my whole career, the hardest thing is to sell minor league baseball, but maybe harder is to sell minor league baseball in a major league city.
Yeah.
And as you and I talked before we got on the air here, we were the only thing minor league at that time because we had the NFL Broncos, the NBA Denver Nuggets, and the NHL, it was called the Colorado Rockies. So Denver had now become big league and was used to seeing the big names, and we didn't have any names. I mean, anybody that we had that got hot for a couple of weeks, they were gone. So we had to learn early that we had to sell the sizzle because we sure didn't have the steak. And even if we drew 10,000 people, Ben, there was still 70 or 65,000 empty seats. So it was a huge disadvantage in that way because no one ever had to buy a ticket in advance because they already knew there was a seat available. And secondly, and this doesn't get talked about a lot, but I know Tyler knows this, but Ben, my father and I, mostly Jim, really led the campaign to get Major League Baseball to Denver. For the 20 years we ran the ball club, our whole goal was to get Major League Baseball to Denver. But to your point, one of the big arguments that Bowie Kuhn had with us was that not only did we not have at that moment the guy to write the check, but our ballpark was too big. And, at that point, Vancouver was trying to get a team. I'm trying to think of Seattle was trying to get a team. So there was a lot of places to go. And the ballpark was just too darn big. But what we did instead, we flipped it and said, well, we're just going to do the biggest promotions we can do that were good, clean, and fun. We weren't going to bring a midget out or anything like that, but we were going to do things that were big. And the start of that, quite frankly, was our annual 4th of July fireworks show, which historically would draw 25, 30,000 people. But in 1979, we had a crowd of 38,490, and we were behind 10-0 in the 4th inning. And I looked on the scoreboard because I thought my dad might be hanging from there because, his biggest crowd of the year and we're stinking up the place. But we score 9 runs with 2 out in the bottom of the ninth to beat Omaha. And From that point on, that became an annual thing in Denver. And the next year we drew, 50,000. And then finally in 1982, we got 65,666 in the ballpark. It was a little more than that, but the fire marshal told me I had to cap it at that. And then there were actually people scalping tickets to a minor league baseball game. So it worked both ways, but it probably was more of a hindrance because, again, there was so many seats available always. So our whole goal was to just have a good, clean atmosphere, keep the concession prices down. And in our last year in 1984, our ticket prices were $2.50 to get in general admission, $3 for a reserve seat, $3.50 for a grandstand seat, and $4 for a press level box seat. So we didn't ever want to gouge the public, but we just kept trying to do whatever we could to draw more people than anybody and get the major leagues to focus on Denver.
For fans of minor league baseball history, talking about that stadium, Mile High Stadium, the original Mile High Stadium was built as Bears Stadium. It was a baseball stadium when it was constructed, and then it was later added on to accommodate the NFL. But when you look at pictures of old Mile High Stadium, the home plate area, which is what, of course, became the home plate structure for when the Rockies played a Mile High in 93, 94, is rounded. But the outfield actually slid in and out on water. The left field stands, they would pump like a 1/4 inch of water under the left field stands, move them back out for baseball games for that configuration, and then slide them back in for football games. So it was such a unique and different sort of environment for baseball. And for you guys, Bob, you talk about wanting to, be able to sell the sizzle because you didn't have the steak. You guys were very much one of the visionary front offices in terms of promotions. And we talk so much on this show about promotions, and so much of Ben's work is about, the promotional calendars and the business of all of that in minor league baseball. But you guys sort of helped lay the groundwork for that with whether it was the San Diego Chicken coming in, the 4th of July game, the fireworks stuff. I know at one time, I believe you built the world's largest corn dog. Was that right? The world's largest hot dog?
The world's largest banana split.
Banana split. That's what it was. The world's largest banana split.
Yes, but we also brought in, excuse me for interrupting, Tyler,
yeah.
but we also brought in the Beach Boys to do a concert after the baseball game. And we drew 42,000 paid people for that game. So and I guess it'd be kind of corny if I said it was a fun day, uh, but if you're old enough to remember who the Beach Boys are, that was a song. But that's exactly what we did. We did do, but you had to. But along with that, and I do think we were in the forefront of promotion, and gratefully, my dad let me do that. He just wanted to focus on winning and being, and geez, we won 5 championships and 5 league championships and 7 division championships in the 20 years we were there. So he was all about that. So I had a great opportunity to almost do any promotion I wanted, because even if it failed, and we rarely had a failure, no one really paid that much attention to it.
So
the successes were really big.
What was that like in that era to be, sort of, you have kind of a blank slate to throw ideas up and try to figure out what is going to work, what's going to turn people out of the ballpark? Because you've got some incredible stories. One of my favorites, and Bob's got a great YouTube channel and Instagram where he tells some of these stories from his time in professional sports. But you brought Satchel Paige out to the ballpark, which is so cool.
Yeah.
What was that process like to be able to have this creative freedom and then land some of those incredible promotions like that?
Well, the only way that happened, Tyler, was because even though my dad spent his majority of his career in the minor leagues, although a year as the assistant to the commissioner of baseball, everybody knew Jim Burris. And we would go to winter meetings carrying the flag to bring big league baseball to Denver. And I was so proud of the fact that nobody ever treated my father like a minor league. He was really held in that esteem as a great baseball man. In fact, a couple of years ago, Tony La Russa was managing just a few years ago, and he was in Kansas City where I live. And I got to see Tony, and I asked him for a quote about my dad, and he said he and Roland Hemond, who was president of the White Sox, a great baseball executive, were the best baseball men he ever knew. So because of that, Jim knew everybody. And so that kind of was up to me then. And I don't know if you want to talk about the Satchel Paige story, but that came about, if I may.
Yeah, go for it.
We happened to go to a league meeting in Springfield, Illinois, and Satchel Paige was working with A. Ray Smith, who owned the Springfield Cardinals at the time, and Satch was just an ambassador. Well, my father and Satch met each other for the very first time right there. We were seated together, and they just clicked. And during that conversation, as Satchel was going on and on and on about these great stories of the Negro Leagues, he said to me quietly, he said, "Hey, you might want to have the old man," meaning himself, "come and make an appearance at the ballpark in Denver this year." And I think we all knew that Satch never made any money and didn't really make a whole lot then either. So I said, "Well, Satch, how would we use you?" And he says, "Well, why don't I just throw it to the media? And if you promote that, if you get a hit off Satchel Paige, I think the media people will talk about it a lot amongst each other." And he was exactly right. So we came back and we promoted the Satchel Paige, and all the DJs and the radio and TV personalities were bannered back and forth. So the publicity we generated was just, you couldn't buy it. So, we ended up with 15 or 20,000 people on a Monday night in Denver, to see Satchel Paige throw batting practice to the media.
Did anybody even foul off a pitch?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Tyler, we don't even know how old Satch was.
Exactly.
But he could still throw, and we had him in a Denver Bear uniform and et cetera. Yeah, it was, and then, but the best part, guys, is that Satch came back 2 or 3 times. But the reason he wanted to come back, first of all, my dad adored him. Second of all, they clicked. They just got it. And Satch would always say to Jim, "You got the sweets?" Well, the sweets meant 7-Up. Satch knew my dad had the bourbon. And so after the ball games, Satch would go up or I should say, after Satch pitched the promotion, Satch would go and do 2 or 3 innings in the radio booth and talk endlessly. And then the next 8 or 9 hours, he's back in my dad's office with me, and I'm listening as they're drinking their bourbon and sweets. I'm listening to these great stories of the Negro Leagues. And and I could go on and on and on, but that's so much of it was that, Jim knew everybody. He just did, and everybody knew how much he loved the game. And that's why I think they liked him so much.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't really top getting Satchel Paige out to the ballpark. But one thing from that era of minor league baseball that always interested me is, this circuit of kind of more vaudeville type performers who would be at the ballparks. Tyler mentioned the famous Chicken, Max Patkin, Captain Dynamite, Morgana, the kissing bandit.
How about Eddie Feiner and the the 4-man softball team, the King in His Court?
Right, the King in His Court.
That one?
That's what I wanted to ask you about. Like, who do you remember being ones that could really draw a crowd, or just had routines that would really either blow your mind or be like, I can't believe this is actually happening right now?
Well, Patkin was probably the most double or triple jointed person you could ever see. And I don't know if you had a chance to see him, Ben, but he could just contort his body in so many different ways, and a great entertainer. But nobody could surpass the Chicken. But the hardest part about getting the Chicken was that my father was such a dinosaur from pure baseball that he didn't want to do anything he didn't want to do anything like, as I said before, bring a midget in or do something corny. And my dad just had no idea, man, who the Chicken was. I mean, he says, no one's going to come and see some chicken. Well, the Chicken cost $4,000. And I finally convinced him through sports writer Woody Page, who's been here in Denver a long time, that Page said, hey, I'll put up the money if your dad will give me this percentage or whatever. So my dad reluctantly agreed, and we drew 24,000 people to see the Chicken. And at the end of that night, Ben, we're in the counting room, and we had three money counting machines, counting bills. My dad coyly came up to me and said, hey, you think we can get that Chicken again?
There you go.
Well, we got him nine more times, Ben.
Yeah.
So he just had it. He just knew the timing of his skits, and he was current and just a great showman. Yeah. I would have to say him.
And theme nights too. I'm curious about those from your era of minor league baseball. Is obvious examples are Disco Demolition Night and 10-cent beer night and things that kind of went off the rails. But did you try to do those type of promotions, either something tapping to something that was in the news, or just offering spectacular discounts just to pack the park on hot dogs or beer, kind of that? What worked when it came to just packing the whole schedule with different promotions?
Well, I had a promotional board that was up on my wall, and we had 68 home dates every year. And I tried to fill every date with something going on. But, again, I'm coming from a background of a father who just did not believe in really promotion. He just didn't want to ever, do something that would defame the game. So he was the hardest sell, Ben, to do something. So getting the Chicken was monumental. Getting the Beach Boys, he thought the Beach Boys were like, I can't even name them, with Motley Crue or something, but he just didn't know it. So the hardest sell was him. We didn't try to do anything really outlandish. We tried to do things that were fun, good, clean. And the Beach Boys, you couldn't have a cleaner group than them. Building the world's largest banana split was good, clean, fun. Everybody likes ice cream. We didn't do any of the bizarre things that happened, and more about than me. But I was kind of held back a little bit, but I'm glad I was, because everything we did was really clean and good and fun. And gosh, we led the minor leagues in attendance almost every year that we had the team. So it was fun. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Bob, when you talked about your dad being interested most in winning, the thing that's so interesting now, looking back on that era of minor league baseball, is it was such a different structure in terms of the relationship that the front office had with the on-field product.
Right.
And you look now at what minor league baseball is like, and obviously the major league organizations control all that talent. And, Ben and I have worked in and around the minors for a long time. I remember when I was working as a radio guy in the minor leagues, we'd have a great team for the first half of the season. They'd clinch a playoff berth, and then all those guys are gone. And by the time the playoffs come around, you're a completely different team. What was it like at that time, having a little bit more influence maybe over what the on-field product was like, and to have somebody who is a GM, a CEO, an executive who is so committed to winning? That's
Mhm.
kind of a different thing from what the minor league front office mold is now.
Well, that's
Yeah,
such an
absolutely.
astute question. I'm glad you asked it because you are absolutely right. First of all, let me take you back to when my dad was working at the Sporting News. One of his jobs was to get the standings of all 59 minor leagues. Now, if you multiply that by 6, that means there was over 300 minor league teams, right?
59
59.
leagues.
He had to get the standings every week for that to go into the Sporting News.
Wow.
So
What
think
year would
about
this have been around?
now 1947.
47.
And that's a fact because I was looking
Wow.
at it just this morning, but that was how many minor leagues we had. So, through the years and attrition, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think, and I hope I can say this humbly enough, I don't think anyone had the stature and the moxie that my dad had working with the major league teams. Our working agreements every year were structured so in favor of us and not the big league club. But what we had going for us, Tyler, was the fact that we had a great city, a great ballpark, great lights. Everybody wanted their kids to be playing in there. And Jim
Interesting.
knew that. And Jim knew that. And I think at the time there were 26 major league teams at the time. And somebody has to put a AAA team where there is a franchise, and we had the franchise. So it wasn't like we were going to be without.
Right.
So, so here's a good example. In 1968, Calvin Griffith, the owner of the Minnesota Twins, had promised us, the AAA affiliate, a good ball club. Well, we started out 7 wins and 22 losses. Now,
Not ideal.
I don't think there was a general manager alive at that time that could do what my dad did. He flew to Minneapolis, charged into Calvin Griffith's office, told Calvin that he'd given us a real lousy ball club, and you just didn't do that. You didn't talk to the big league club this way. And if he wasn't going to get us better players, at least fire the manager. Well,
Wow.
Calvin astutely said, "Okay, Jim." Not this wasn't astute. He said, "Okay, Jim, if you're so smart, who do you want as your man?" And my dad said, "Billy Martin."
Billy Martin.
And
There you
Calvin
go.
astutely said, "Billy Martin can't manage himself. How can I put him in charge of 25 kids that are 20 years old? And he'll never come anyway." Well, the next thing I know, Billy Martin is living in our house in Denver. And at that time, I'm running the scoreboard, but Billy Martin taught my brother and I every night after the games. He'd come home because he's only going to be there for 3 or 4 months. And we had a speed bag, and Billy taught me and my brother how to box. And talking baseball with a guy like that was incredible. That's another story. But I don't think anybody ever could do that in our era, talk to the big league club the way they did. But, Billy, we went, I think I had it written down, we went 65 and 50
Wow.
when Billy was there. But more importantly, in the last 59 games, we were 39 and 20.
Man.
So Martin took us
Not a
from
bad
last
turnaround
place,
from 7 and
and people
22.
just flocked to the
Yeah.
ballpark because we stole home 9 times in that time that Billy was there. So Jim was right. He was right he was right on. And Martin, the rest of is history. But my dad also promoted Tony La Russa to be a manager, and Tony only became the winningest manager of all time. So a baseball man, Jim was awfully good, and he spent his whole career in the minor leagues.
That's pretty incredible. And especially when you think about it from the context of like, there are no minor league team owners or GMs who have that,
Clout.
that clout and that breadth of grace to be able to go into a major league front office and say, "Hey, I need something better as my on-field product." Just doesn't happen in the minor leagues anymore. And it's so interesting too, because when you look at that era, Denver was in this period of transition, and obviously you and I we could do a month of podcast just talking about that, and how cool that era was for this city and the change. But you are not just working with the baseball promotion side. But another story I want to ask you about that I know involved Barry Fay, who was a legendary concert promoter at this time. You had an old timers game at Mile High Stadium in which the sitting vice president of the United States came and played dressed up in a Bears uniform, got delivered onto the field. George H.W. Bush came and played he's a former college baseball player, of course, at Yale. Tell us about that story, because man, that's another thing that I know we have had, presidents, vice presidents who have attended minor league games in relatively recent years, but that is a completely different thing.
Well, I have one whole podcast devoted, as you know, Tyler, devoted to that same story. But the way it all happened was that everybody was trying to do whatever they could to bring Major League Baseball to Denver. And Barry Fay, who wasn't a close friend of ours at all, but we always respected his promotional ability. He brought an old timers game to Denver on a date that the Bears were not playing. And even though we weren't playing, we still helped out and worked at the game. But at the same time, Vice President George H.W. Bush was in Denver, and he was staying at the Brown Palace Hotel, the same hotel that the old timers were staying at. And Warren Spahn was talking to Warren Spahn, and Luke Appling and a couple others were talking to the vice president, who, as you mentioned, played baseball at Yale and was a big baseball fan, and his son was part owner of the Texas Rangers as well. And Spahn kept saying to the vice president, you ought to come out and hang out with the guys tonight at the ballpark. And Spahn then calls my dad and says, Jim, this is Spahny. You're not going to believe this, but I think I've got the vice president of the United States coming to the game tonight. And my dad politely said to Warren, who was a good friend, he said, sure. That'd be great. If he comes, yeah, we'll take care of him. Well, probably one of the smartest things I ever did was when my dad told me the story, we just both said, oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I did call our clubhouse manager, who was working the game for Barry Fay. And I said to him, you're not going to believe this, and I'm only going to tell you this and nobody else, but you may get a visitor tonight. And if Vice President Bush shows up, make sure you put him in a Denver Bear uniform. And Tyler, I forgot about it. I just totally forgot about it. In the third or fourth inning, I can't remember what it was, the outfield fence opens up and a big limousine comes in and goes around the warning track down the first baseline and stops at first base, and out in a Denver Bear uniform is Vice President George H.W. Bush with a left-handed first baseman mitt. And the vice president played for 2 innings and, made a terrific stop off Tony Oliva on a hard line drive that I'm sure the Secret Service people were worried about, that vice president was going to get hurt. And then he gets a hit in the next inning. So he stole the show in a Denver Bear uniform.
Amazing.
So that's how that came about. But you just can't make this stuff up.
What an incredible story. It's just so cool. And I actually, several years ago, my early seasons with MILB.com, sent an interview request. This is when George H.W. Bush was pretty aged at that point. I know his health was kind of an issue, but I sent an interview request to his presidential museum asking to interview him about that game. And they responded and said, he wants you to know that he has very fond memories of that. He's not going to be able to do an interview, but it was a really cool thing for him to experience. And that was amazing. And Bob, before we get out of here, I want to ask you about one more story, since I've just hijacked this interview to bring up all of my old Denver sports stuff, which is what I've always wanted to do with you. But by the way, before we get to the end of this, go to bobburris.com. You can read about all of Bob's different experiences with Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, the PGA, the LPGA. Bob's got a podcast. He's got, like I said, an Instagram account, a great YouTube channel. But Bob, there's one story that I need to ask you about, because I remember watching it when I was probably 8 or 9 years old. I remember hearing this story for the first time on my Orange Sunday VHS tape, The History of the Denver Broncos. And that is a story from, I believe, the late 1960s. And you do have this story on YouTube, but I want you to tell all of our listeners about, in 1969, I'm finding this now, The Denver Broncos were playing host to the San Diego Chargers. Big game, big at that time AFL West game. And at some point in that game, the name on the scoreboard got switched from either San Diego or Chargers to, on the bottom of the line score, it said Denver, and on the top it said hot dogs. And I remember that story from when I was a child, and I know that there is a chance that maybe you have some inside info on that story if you would like to come clean at all nearly 60 years later.
Well, you're nice to bring that up. I am blamed for that even to this day. I was working during the summers. I would work as the scoreboard operator for the Denver Bears. I did not do the Bronco games, but in 1969, the fall of '69, I went to Colorado State University, and and it didn't take long, I guess, that somebody in the fraternity house recognized my last name and connected me with my dad. And of course, at that time, my dad was general manager of the Broncos. So they all said, well, can we go down and see a game? And of course, we hadn't ever sold out. The Broncos had never sold out, but the Jets were playing that week. So we made the 65-mile drive down to Mile High Stadium and got out. And I went up and I knew every ticket taker there was and everybody, but it was sold out and no one was letting me in. So disgruntled, and we were walking back to our car. I looked at the keys for my car, or tried to find them, I guess, and I realized that I had a key to the scoreboard. And I didn't know if it worked for Bronco games. Well, we went over to the back of the scoreboard, which was behind left field, and I put the key in the lock, and it it worked. We scampered up to the top of the stadium, and we saw the Jets get beat by the Broncos. The Broncos came from behind to win on a great catch by former sportscaster Mike Hafner, later, who was a Bronco at the time, and we beat the Jets. So we went down the scoreboard. Nobody saw us. Nobody said anything. The next week, Kansas City Chiefs come into town. Again, we come back, breaking the first rule of any criminal would say, don't ever return to the scene of the crime. But it worked once. Why not try it again? Well, about the middle of the second quarter, Captain Jerry Kennedy, who was the head of security at the ballpark, through his binoculars, saw some kids on the very top of the scoreboard. And as he looked through the binoculars, he said, I'm not sure, but I think that's Bobby Burris. And of course it was. Well, the next thing I know, Jim Burris had caught all the way around the stadium and come up and yelling at me up at the top to get my butt down. So me and three fraternity brothers scampered down. I got the tongue lashing of my life, and we laughed all the way back to Fort Collins. Well, the Broncos go on the road, and 3 weeks later, they come back and they're playing the Chargers. Now, Tyler, I'm not going anywhere near the stadium. Denver is leading 13-0, but sometime in the early part of the fourth quarter, somebody, and I wish they'd come forward, got up there and took took San Diego out and put HOTDOGS. So the final score reads Denver 13, hot dogs nothing. I know nothing about this. So the next thing I know, I'm getting a phone call at the fraternity house, and somebody said, hey, Burris, your dad's on the phone down here at the phone. And I go down, he says, Bob, this is Jim Burris. It's not like your dad. He says, this is Jim Burris. And I'm sitting here with Baron Hilton, owner of the Hilton Hotel Corporation and the San Diego Chargers. And something happened today at the stadium that only one person I know of could have done it. I said, what are you talking about? So he lays it out for me. I should have said, well, I'm sorry, Dad, but I'm a Marriott guy, not a Hilton guy, but I didn't. Anyway, I'm listening to this, and I said, there is no way.
You're in Fort Collins taking this call. You're 65 miles away. You got an alibi.
Right. But it was horribly embarrassing, and it only added fuel to the fire because, as you know, growing up there, we hate San Diego, we hate Kansas City, we hate who else is in our division?
Oakland / Los Angeles / Vegas.
So that was a personal affront to them. A couple months before my mother passed away, my mom asked me, she said, okay, Bob, you can tell me now. Did you do it? And I didn't, but I sure wish that guy would come forward. But you're nice to ask me that because that was a heck of a moment.
That's an all-time great Denver sports story. All-time great. And man, this has been an all-time conversation for the Show Before the Show podcast. We could do this for 7 more hours. But again, bobburris.com. Bob's got so many amazing stories. You can go check out the podcast, check out the website. And Bob, this has been so cool. It's so great for us.
Yeah.
You know, Ben and I think, are two guys who sort of feel like we came from that middle school of minor league baseball, where there was the old school that we look back on and admire so much, and now this new school, and people are doing so many cool things in minor league baseball these days. But man, what a joy it is to hear some of these stories, and thank you so much for giving us some time.
Well, you're so kind. Before I leave you, we should also talk sometime about the forbidden file cabinet, which was a cabinet that a file cabinet that I found in the garage of our house that we were never supposed to look into, because it was when my dad was president of the American Association. He kept all the files of the player ejection files.
No way.
And I have all those. But what happens when a player is ejected, both the umpire who ejects him and the manager who is ejected, or player, writes their own report. And they have to write it in the exact language that they said it in. And finally, one day I looked into the file and and my 4 sisters and I got a whole new vocabulary.
You learned an entirely new language.
New language. But that might be something that somebody might want to listen to too sometime.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Bob, this has been such a joy, and thank you so much for the time. And we will we might have to make this like in every off season we go through some new insane story from the seasons past of minor league baseball.
Well, you're awfully nice. And Ben, thank you for allowing me to come on.
Oh, of course. That was great to have you. And yeah, stories for days. We'll do this again sometime.
Good. Okay.
Bob Burris, great stuff. Amazing stories to get to hear about an era gone by in minor league baseball. And as we get closer to the start of the 2026 season, we've got this new era, this current era of minor league baseball to discuss. And here to discuss all things on field with us is Sam Dykstra. Sam, we started this show with a lot of optimism and excitement about pitchers and catchers reporting, but like everyone in baseball is getting hurt this week, and that has not been fun.
Yeah, I don't know how much of it is guys getting hurt, although there is part of that. It sounds like Corbin Carroll started taking swings.
Yeah.
And just unfortunately got hurt. I think part of that is guys showing up, right? And they're going through physicals and things are getting looked at. And it's like, oh, that's not what we hoped for. You should get surgery for that right now. I was talking to somebody about Corbin Carroll earlier today, and they were saying, it's disappointing that this happened, but it's better to happen now than in the middle of the season, right? Same thing with Francisco Lindor. Francisco Lindor has gotten surgery, but could return for opening day. It doesn't sound like that's going to happen for Jackson Holiday. We'll see what happens with Corbin Carroll, but in the case of this next prospect, it sounds like, there were some elbow issues. He got them checked out and unfortunately was ruled out for, I don't want to say all yet. You keep a little bit of window open there because he's a position player, but it could be all of, at least most of 2026. And that player is who, Tyler?
That is Sebastian Walcott of the Texas Rangers.
That is top Texas Rangers prospect, Sebastian Walcott. People might remember this. They might not, because obviously there was so much going on in the fall. Sebastian Walcott was actually supposed to be in the Arizona Fall League.
Right.
But was taken out because of arm fatigue, which is too bad. He was somebody I was definitely looking forward to seeing. I actually got to see in Frisco and actually also in San Antonio last year. Got to talk to him for a bit for that. It's really fun to watch him play. He's supremely young. That's why he's the number 7 prospect in baseball. Played all of last year at AA. He's still only 19 years old. But when you watch him play, one thing that stands out to me and anybody else who sees him, he's got a rocket of an arm. He really slings it. I mean, it's got zip, it's got accuracy, it's everything you would want. Some people think maybe he'll move to third base because of it and the fact that he's 6'4", but the arm really works. Now he's got a torn UCL. It's not as worrisome, obviously, for position players as it would be for pitchers, right? You hear torn UCL, and as of recording right now, as of Thursday, Kennedy Landry, who first reported it for MLB.com, notes that it's still not clear, or at least announced, whether it's going to be Tommy John surgery or internal brace. Internal brace surgery usually requires a little bit less rehab. So we'll see where that means for Walcott, but he doesn't need to throw 100 pitches, right? Like there will be a throwing program, but it's not as strenuous as it would be for pitchers who live and die with their arms. So maybe we see Walcott by the end of the year. It seems like they're planning for him to maybe play in the fall league or some sort of winter ball. I will throw out there, I would love to see him in Arizona as somebody who's in Arizona. But it's just unfortunate, right? Like Sebastian Walcott, one thing that we were all hanging our hats on with him is he was 19 for all of 2025, hit 255, 355, 386 in 124 games for Double A Frisco, 13 homers, 32 stolen bases. You dream on the power, it's 30 homer power. But now as he was starting to turn into his 20s, he's turning 20 next month. That's where everything was going to click for him, right? And now he's got to sit on the bench and rehab and rest and do all that stuff before we really see him out there again. So still reasons to believe in Sebastian Walcott. Really unfortunate that he's going to miss so much development time and what could have been, I think, a year for him to absolutely take off. But the other thing about this too, for me, is you look at this Ranger system, right? They just traded away multiple prospects for Mackenzie Gore. They went quantity over quality in that trade, kind of because they had to get Gore over the line. Now your only top 100 prospect is not playing this year. It could be a very difficult year on the farm for the Texas Rangers if Walcott's not going to be that shining star who's going to provide weekly highlights. You hope somebody steps up. You hope they find some other gem in there and somebody else can really break out and become that top 100 guy. I know Cade Scarborough is a top 100 prospect in some other places. But as things stand right now, so much for the Rangers farm this year was hinging on Walcott being healthy, being productive, and really taking off in his 20s. And unfortunately, we're just not going to see that for at least a few months.
All right, Sam. Well, outside of the injury issues around various camps in baseball, pitchers and catchers did report this week. Give us the excitement level for you, but also just the current stage of where we are going into this 2026 campaign, especially with some other top prospect talent.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about pitchers and catchers, and I'll go back to what I said about how optimistic that phrase is. But there's so many mini camps that are happening right now. Like Eli Willits for the Washington Nationals, he's being included in their walk-up videos right now for the Nats. Like they're putting out there, hey, here's everybody walking into camp. Everybody's excited, and obviously they're turning over a new leaf down there right now in West Palm Beach, but in DC in general. So there's so many fresh new faces, but they're running a mini camp there at the same time. And guys like Eli Willits are there. Harleen Susana is there on the MLB side. Travis Sakura is there on the MLB side. So things are still happening on the backfields this early. And one thing I'll throw out there, Connor Griffin is a non-roster invite to Pirates camp, but a video that has been going around is him taking batting practice and hitting a car because he's hitting our tanks already in Bradenton.
Pretty good.
Pretty good, and makes me worried about what happens when I go to Florida.
Yeah, you got to figure out where to park.
Yeah,
leave yourself a good distance to walk.
I will say Pirate City is one of the more confusing places to park because Bradenton, they split it, right? There's the main park where the Bradenton Marauders play,
right,
downtown Bradenton, but Pirate City is the minor league complex where a lot of the workouts happen. So if it's a game day, all the major league side will be over in the main ballpark, but all the minor leaguers will still be on the other side. So trying to find parking can be a little tough. You might have to park close to a backfield. And if Connor Griffin's hitting bombs like this, well, just maybe don't park too close. It's okay to walk if you need to. But he's doing that. And then also you find out like the next day, like today, there was video of Bubba Chandler going up against Connor Griffin in a live BP setting. And Bubba Chandler strikes out Connor Griffin, which isn't going to make me worried about Connor Griffin, but makes me more excited for Bubba Chandler, right? Like we're starting to see these things start to trickle in. There was one about Cade Anderson throwing his bullpen session in front of basically felt like the entire Mariners front office because everybody wants not a piece of that guy, but they want to see, hey, was a star for LSU. He was the MVP of the College World Series. He was all of these things. He's our number 3 overall pick. Lots of talk of like, how quickly can this guy get to the big leagues? Okay, now you're working in a spring training for your first time. How are you showing up in shape? How are your pitches looking? Because that's the other thing too, right? It used to be guys would show up. That's when they start to work on things with coaches. That's when things start to get honed. Now you are showing up with your arsenal already kind of fine tuned, right? Like maybe you've been working on a new pitch. You hear about Garrett Crochet working on a new pitch, over there for the Red Sox. It seemed like everybody last year was adding a splitter, or a few years beyond that, everybody was working on a sweeper. Now guys are showing up with new pitch shapes, and that's something that I'm hearing a lot from front offices when I ask about, hey, how's this pitcher looking? Good, we're working on a slider variation with him. Now my question used to be, does that just mean sweeper? And now that we've turned the corner on sweepers, where guys have seen it enough that sweepers aren't actually effective, and Saris has written about this, maybe the death of the sweeper. Does that mean a gyro? Does that mean a short slider? There's so many different questions that can mean. So that's what I'm most excited about, is like these guys getting in camp and getting themselves in front of us. And now we get to see all that stuff and what they're doing differently, what they're not doing differently. Have they tweaked release point? Have they tweaked extension, as difficult as that can be? This is where we start to get some answers. And one thing I'll also throw out there that I'm very excited for this spring, every spring training ballpark is going to have StatCast. So all Cactus League games, all Grapefruit League games are now going to have data presented to all of us. It used to be, yeah, in Florida, if you were a Florida State League stadium, you had it, but not places like Sarasota, right? They wouldn't necessarily do it. Or if you were in Arizona, Salt River would have it, but not the other places. Now everywhere will. And I think that's going to make fans' understanding of what's going on with all these guys so much easier. It's going to make our jobs a lot easier to report on, like, hey, when we say this guy's working on a new slider, here's the exact look of it. If somebody's adding a kick change, this is what it looks like metrically. We don't have to wait for the regular season anymore. That gets me super excited. So things are starting to get there, right? We're starting to get more guys showing up, giving more quotes to beat writers. Grateful to all the beat writers that are on the ground right now. Can't wait to join them in a month or so. So even though it seems like all doom and gloom and we're getting all these injury news, and that's just what happens when baseball starts, right? Like guys get hurt when it's in the off season and they're not doing this hard work. They don't get hurt, and isn't that lovely? But if we're going to play the game, it's unfortunately a small price we pay. But hopefully everybody can stay as healthy as possible. And we're talking more about production here very shortly with the Cactus and Grapefruit League right around the corner.
All right, Sam, great stuff as always. You can read all of Sam's stuff at mlb.com/pipeline. And coming up, we'll step aside for our final timeout, bringing on back with Name That Dude, and we'll say goodbye for this week's episode of the show before the show. Final segment of this week's episode of the Show Before the Show podcast. Huge thanks to Bob Burris for joining us a little while ago. Great stuff as always from your pal and ours, Benjamin Hill and Sam Dykstra, who are they're both still here as we're going to wrap up this week's episode with the latest edition of Name That Dude, in which one of us knows a dude from baseball years past and the other guys will try to name that dude. And this week, I am the one who knows the dude, which makes you guys the guys who will guess the dude. And this dude was drafted by the Milwaukee Brewers in the 1993 MLB June Amateur Draft, the 7th round, out of Northwestern University, which I actually did not know about this dude, but went to Northwestern, made his debut in the Milwaukee organization in 1993 at 2 different stops. He was in the rookie-level Pioneer League with the Helena Brewers and then with the Stockton Ports in the then High A Cal League. Did not have a long stay in minor league baseball. The next year, 94, the strike year, obviously he split time between then AA El Paso, the Diablos, and AAA New Orleans, the Zephyrs, in their second season, I believe, after relocating to New Orleans. He was back in AAA for a little bit of the following season in 95 and in 96, but spent the majority of his time that year up with the big club, with the Milwaukee Brewers. Made his major league debut in 1995. He was with the Brewers through 99, just exclusively. Then in 2000, split time between the Brewers and their AAA affiliate that year, the Indianapolis Indians. He did the same thing in 2001. And then in 2002, started moving around baseball. He was with the Brewers to start that year, then with the Houston Astros at the end of the season. 2003 through 2005, he was with the San Diego Padres. He did see one rehab stint with AAA Portland, the Portland Beavers, in 2005. He was a member of the 2006 Boston Red Sox, 2007 and 2008 Houston Astros, and he ended his career as a 37-year-old in 2009 with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Does anybody have a guess as to this dude?
Ugh, members of the '06 Sox. I should be.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking if anybody was going to get it from one team selection. Not only was he a member of the '06 Sox, he was an all-star for the 2006 Boston Red Sox.
Oh, man. Okay.
His best year, at least by Baseball Reference WAR, was 2003 with the Padres. And I'll
was it? No. Was Mark
It
Loretta?
was Mark Loretta. Look at
there we
you,
go. Thank
Samuel.
goodness, I would not have gotten that for a while.
Great
Yeah,
work,
once he said his
Sam.
best year was with the Padres, I was like, okay, that was the years where the Red Sox were rotating through their second base options.
Yeah,
They were trying to find somebody who would stick there. Obviously, Mark Bellhorn was there in '04.
Mark Bellhorn, what a guy.
Pokey Reese was on the team for a time, but nobody was. Todd Walker was also in the mix for a while there, but nobody quite had stuck. And Mark Loretta was a star of the game at one point.
Yeah.
So people thought, okay, this could be it, but I
This
think it
could
was a
be
little
it.
too late in his career.
He had a good year. Well, a decent year, I guess I should say.
No,
I think I said his career year was 2003. It was actually 2004. 03 put up a 314, 372, 441 slash line for the Padres. 04, an all-star that year, 6 WAR, 335, 391, 495, and 886 OPS. That season in Boston, he was an all-star, but he actually had the lowest OPS of any full season in his career, dating back to 2001, it looks like. But he still that year, 285, 345, 361 for the Red Sox, only 0.5 WAR, but he was an all-star. Mark Loretta. Look at you, Sam.
I'm pretty happy with that one. I think it's
Very
been a while
impressive.
for us to really get it on the first guess like that, so I'm very happy with that. That's a good dude, Tyler.
That was
I will
very
say.
impressive. Mark Loretta also has a World Baseball Classic connection. He was on the Israeli coaching staff for the 2013 qualifier back in 2012. They didn't make the Classic in 2013, but Mark Loretta, a dude. And wherever you are, Mark Loretta, we say hello. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of the show before the show. Huge thanks to Bob Burris. Great stuff from Ben and Sam as always. And for those guys, my name is Tyler Maughan. We'll catch you next week.